Welcome to the Delight Your Marriage podcast. You're joining me, Bella Rose, as I dive deep into the beauty, power, and truths about intimacy. Learn not only the practicals, but the heart behind what making love is all about. Delight your marriage.
All right, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me. Now, if you listened to last week's podcast, you know that my husband and I just are pretty much recovered from COVID-19 ourselves. And I did give my health journey on that podcast. And so what I wanted to do was invite a bona fide doctor to give us his advice, not just on COVID-19 stuff, which I think is super important, super helpful, but also sexual health, because obviously during this time, as I have talked about, that while you're in quarantine, this is the best time to get your sex life on track. You've got probably a lot more time. Business is probably slower. Now is the best time to get your sex life in order. And so if you can kill two birds with one stone, which means get your sexual intimacy straightened out through health, as well as be fully prepared for your immune health in fighting off a potential contracting COVID-19, then that is, the best of all worlds. So I want to introduce this wonderful Dr. Joel Kahn, and this is actually his second time on the podcast. And he just has not only a great sense of humor, which is obviously important, but he's got just amazing breadth of experience that he's bringing to this conversation. Dr. Joel K. Kahn, MD, is a clinical professor of medicine at Wayne State University School of Medicine. He's known as America's Healthy Heart Doc. He is contributor to many online sites such as LinkedIn and Thrive Global, and has appeared several times on Dr. Phil and the doctor's television shows. Dr. Kahn founded the Kahn Center for Cardiac Longevity in suburban Detroit and owns Green Space and Go in Royal Oak, Michigan. He's also the author of a bunch of books, and I'll just say a couple here that I think will pique your interest. There's The Plant-Based Solution, Dead Execs Don't Get Bonuses, Vegan Sex, and his newest one is Lipoprotein A, the Heart's Quiet Killer. So you can visit him at drjoelkahn.com. And that's wonderful. Well, I am very excited to discuss not only sexual health, but also how to make your body as healthy as possible in these difficult times. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive in. Welcome back, Delight Your Marriage listener, and I'm so excited to have Dr. Joel Kahn on here with me. Thank you so much for joining.
My pleasure. I'm very excited to speak with you and your audience.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Actually, Dr. Joel, I'll say that when we chatted was about 3 or 4 years ago, and I remember getting a lot of feedback on how wonderful it was to have you on. And
yeah, I wasn't sure what kind of feedback you were going to get, but I'm glad to hear that.
Very positive, very positive. So what I wanted to do in this conversation was focus quite a lot on how health impacts intimacy. And before I really dive in, you've got a great amount of insight, not only because you're a cardiologist, but because you are just really focused on how blood affects everything in health. And so I'm just curious if you can give a little bit of insight into your background as it relates to understanding how intimacy can be healthy.
Sure. I mean, my bio in a very short and sweet measure, I'm talking to you today from suburban Detroit. I grew up in suburban Detroit, attended the University of Michigan, breezed through undergrad and medical school, was able to graduating number one from medical school. So I'm proud of that. That was a lot of work. Trained to be, you trained to be an internist, then a cardiologist. I moved to Dallas and finally moved to Kansas City. This is in the late 80s, early 90s, to become a specialist in heart attack treatment, balloons, stents, And I entered practice in 1990 back in Detroit and Ann Arbor. I circled back, stayed ever since. The Great Lakes state has an appeal to me, and obviously family and friends from childhood. But I had a very aggressive practice. In the middle of the night, you were having a heart attack, or Saturday afternoon, didn't matter. I was driving 100 miles an hour to get to your house. I wasn't thinking a lot about intimacy and marriage and such. I just was working my tail off. But I had, along the way, adopted long ago, 40 years ago, a plant-based diet. I wasn't a hippie. I wasn't a tree hugger. I had a kind of a reaction to the dormitory food versus my mother's food. I learned quickly thereafter in medical school residency that there might be something to this for health and something I could teach my patients. It took a little while till the really good science came out. It took a little longer to find out that diet and sexuality and intimacy have a pretty strong connection. But I always was a little more interested than the average trainee and cardiologist because I had kind of altered my diet to a total plant diet called vegan diet, but it was the healthy kind, big salads and big bean chilies and bean soups. And about 10 years ago, I said, I'm putting in balloons and stents, and I'm eating bean chili at home. I'm going to kind of integrate these and become a real preventive cardiologist. Anything natural that has science. If you need a prescription, you need an operation, okay, there's nothing we can do about that. But how many people have ever heard that you can reverse many cases of type 2 adult diabetes? You can reverse many cases of heart disease. You can reverse cases of multiple sclerosis and lupus. And I'm talking total science. You can reverse sexual dysfunction that's based on bad blood flow. And so that's what I do all the time now is I counsel people around the United States. And during our lockdown, it's all on the phone. It was very much a lot of phone and Skype consults, but now 100%. And a lot of people actually spoke to a gentleman today in Zurich, all over the world. There aren't a lot of natural preventive heart doctors, and I'm proud to say I'm one of them. I'm a pretty experienced guy. I've been doing cardiology for over 30 years. To finish up, when you talk about blood flow, of course, my first interest was heart blood flow and stress tests and electrocardiograms and angiograms and bypass surgery and stents. But, the rest of the body isn't any different. You want your brain to function well and avoid brain disease, you need good blood flow. You got to get oxygen. You got to get nutrients. You want your sexual organs to function well. A lot of that is great blood flow, great nutrients, great oxygen. Certainly you can go to your kidneys and you can go to your lungs and, we don't have to dissect the body. Every part of the body needs as clean arteries as when we were born, providing ample blood flow. But we have this problem that starts from 30, 40, 50, and 60, which is that starts to diminish. But in terms of intimacy and responsiveness, it isn't entirely based on blood flow. It's not all plumbing, but it's a big piece of it. And I talk to the guys particularly, and I don't want to sound at all gender biased. You may not love this diet, but I want you to think about your sexuality, your sexual performance, before you need pills, before you need shots, before you're unable. And that often hooks them in a lot more, than talk about heart attacks and strokes and bypass. A lot of them would say, I'll keep eating burgers, I'll take the bypass surgery, but when you present it in a sexual, intimate function way, sometimes you grab their attention. Women are just smarter. They get it from the get-go.
That's right. The guys, you got to get them where their priority is. It's the sex. So, no, that's great. So just to clarify, if you don't mind, I'm going to be a bit more specific. So when we talk about performance, you're talking about whether or not a man can become erect. Is that what diet affects?
It's even before that. I talk to all my patients I have for years. Even libido, interest. Is the drum still beating before you even take the tools out and see if the tools work? And, there's reasons females have a drop in libido, often around menopause, could be kids, could be relationship problems, but real health issues, blood pressure, diabetes, when your mind is distracted. There's a statement I love. I used it in an email to my patients today. that when you have your health, you have 1,000 dreams. When you have poor health, you really only have one dream, which is to get it back. And that, if you've got an issue, whether it's arthritis, whether it's, God forbid, cancer and heart disease and on, libido may be on the back burner. So that's where it starts. If you wake up every day and for years and maybe decades, you've really taken good care, just like a classic car that you've put the best fuel and you polish and you never let it out in the rain and the whole thing. If you were to treat your body that way from the time you were 20, you're going to be a sexy 50, 60, 70-year-old. You're going to have libido and performance. So, yeah. And then, of course, there is the female equivalent of erection in terms of arousal and lubrication. And, and that is a serious issue. A lot of women do withdraw a bit around the time of menopause from my conversations and reading because, the mechanics aren't as well lubed, to use another car analogy. I'm from Detroit. I can't help it. But the bottom line is a lot of that is not inevitable. It's not always just aging, and we should anticipate at age 40, 50, 60, or 70 that we put that side of our life away. Of course, there can be intimacy without actual sexual activity or full completion of the sexual activity. But when you got it all and you feel 20 when you're 50, 60, or 70, that is an achievable goal no matter what age you are. And you're lucky if you've been able to maintain that. But it's usually hard work that made you lucky.
Yeah, I love that. Well, in terms of the hard work that makes you lucky, let's focus first on men and their what specifically do they need to do in terms of eating to preserve their sexual health?
Well, this is a little technical. It's not dirty, it's just technical. But if you understand it a little better, you'll understand why there's a statement from a couple thousand years ago, don't dig your grave with your fork. And you can almost reframe that as don't dig your low libido and your inability to have a sexual responsiveness with your fork. And I'll add your spoon or your knife just to be complete. Maybe people eat with their hands, so don't dig it with your hands either. Nonetheless, it's an amazing thought. There's 50,000 miles of arteries through the body. Arteries that are big, like around the heart, all the way down to really microscopic ones, to the littlest ones called capillaries. And we don't think about it much, but every second of every day is because those arteries are bringing that fuel to the machinery. And every artery is lined with a thin lining called endothelium. You don't have to necessarily remember that. You might remember as a kid, you might have pointed to somebody on the school ground and said your epidermis is showing when you were maybe acting a bit like a jerk, meaning you could see your skin. That's the epidermis is the outer lining of the body. Endothelium is the inner lining of arteries. And you want that endothelium, you want to treat that endothelium like a $100,000 Persian rug. You certainly don't want to spoil it, dirty it, or rip it or tear it. Well, it turns out lifestyle, particularly food, is either going to enhance and preserve your endothelium so that, and what happens when you have a healthy endothelium, the Nobel Prize in Medicine was given for this in 1998. You make a lot of substances, but this one layer lining, like wallpaper in your arteries everywhere, head to toe, makes a substance called nitric oxide, NO, that won the Nobel Prize. And that's very lifestyle driven. It's a little bit genetic, but if you smoke, the chemicals get into your blood. They will damage your arteries by damaging the endothelium. And you have a cigarette or a cigar before a little amorous activity, you're not going to get the same blood flow response for a few hours that you did if you skipped a cigarette or a cigar. But you can take it right to actual science done with a cheeseburger and a sausage egg McMuffin and a milkshake. These have actually been done where they measure how healthy is your lining of your arteries. Now, I'll tell you in a minute, you can take it directly to sexual science experiments, but they're usually apparatus on the arm of the healthy subject. And if you eat a cheeseburger for about 7 hours, your arteries are stunned. They're damaged. Your endothelium has been poked. My friend Michael Greger says, don't poke your arteries with your fork. Kind of like the thought about digging your grave with your fork. It actually releases toxic chemicals from your intestines and bacteria. And you will recover from it, usually. A few people have a giant, fatty, greasy meal, and they do trigger a heart attack, and that's the end. But you'll recover from it. But meal after meal, day after day, month after month, you will beat down that wonderful system that we're born with, that really miraculous system that we're born with. And you will end up with blood pressure, or you'll have sore joints, or you'll have erectile dysfunction, or your libido will be off. There was, and it really tends to be, although I will declare my bias, I've eaten nothing but plant foods for over 40 years. I mean, only peas and beans and lentils and whole grains and fruits and vegetables. There's not been a piece of fish or meat or cheese or eggs in me in 43 years now. And I'm in good health at 61 without medication and a lot of vitality. And my wife would say too much, boom, boom. But God bless her, she's in equally good shape because we've been together since we were 9, which is a very sweet story. But there was a movie, and I'd encourage anybody to go to Netflix and look up. It's called The Game Changers movie. I'll tell you this real quick. It came out, I think, November 2019, so it's pretty recent. And there is a scene. It's about usually athletes that have changed their diet against the stream, gone away from chicken and beef, moved over to plant-based diets. These are Olympic athletes and professional athletes and the NFL football team, Tennessee Titans. Anyways, they recruited 3 young athletes, and I really want the men to listen to this and the women that love their men, and 3 like 20-year-old athletes from University of Southern California. And they found in the warehouse that a urologist had an old machine called the Rigid Scan. Well, you went to bed with a little device on your male sexual organ. And at nighttime, when you're 20 years old, there's a lot of nighttime erections that go on. I mean, these were 3 guys sleeping alone in their dorm room. But one night they fed them a beef meal, and one night they fed them a plant meal. And the results were calculated, and they came back. And some of these guys, 300 to 500% increase in the number of times, the duration, and the quality of these nocturnal erections. And, there's a lot of guys they can't remember the last time they woke up with an erection. But this stuff really is real. Food is medicine. Food supports good health when you're picking whole foods, brightly colored, low in added sugar, salt, and fats. And food can be very toxic. I mean, it may take years and years for a bad diet to raise the risk of heart disease, cancer, strokes. It happens. But one meal before a date, one meal before an anniversary special night might, either be the keys to the kingdom or the moment of, unfortunately, failure and dissolution. So it's beyond food. Don't smoke, exercise, try and manage your weight, know your blood pressure, know your blood cholesterol, know your blood sugar. But, particularly, I'll tell you, green leafy vegetables, beets, watermelon, nuts and seeds, like particularly pine nuts. You'll see every day of my life, I've got this giant salad with arugula and beets and pine nuts and maybe some vinegars. Vinegars are incredibly good for your arteries, as opposed to throwing too many of the, Russian and Thousand Island dressings that are nothing but poor quality industrial oils. But those are the foods that support health in general, and particularly libido and performance for men and women. It's all the same.
Well, I'm really glad you mentioned that the study that you just said, because I only just saw that documentary, and you're absolutely right. It's just like mind blowing to see what that is. So Game Changers, right, on Netflix, you mentioned. Okay, so you've got so plant-based is the first and foremost, and then specifically to zero in is green leafy vegetables, watermelon, pine nuts, beets, vinegars. Those things need to be consistent. Is that right?
Yeah, and you brought up the term plant-based, and you're very appropriate using it. I'm a pretty loving and patient guy when I'm dealing with my patients. Of the major, I started as a heart doctor, but it turns out sexual health has a huge overlap, because fitness, not smoking, diet, weight control, blood sugar control, same things I want my heart patients to do, will also promote better and preserve better sexual health and intimacy and ability to, love in a physical way, not just an emotional way. You want both. There's a rumor that people that eat more plants smell better, and a whole online conversation that go even beyond that. We'll just leave that there. But plant-based, of the 5, we call them big risk factors. There's a lot of little ones for developing clogged arteries and having a stroke, having a heart attack, developing erectile dysfunction, smoking, fitness, cholesterol, blood sugar, blood pressure, diet. The one we do the worst at in the United States and the Western world is getting enough fruits and vegetables in our diet. Only about 15% of people smoke. It's way too much, but it used to be 50%. And it's about 50% of people go to the gym or work out in their basement or work out in their backyard. It's about 5% of Americans eat a decent number, more than 5 servings of brightly colored fruits and vegetables, bell peppers and red apples and radishes and purple cabbage. You can go on and on. So plant-based, I don't care if you just add 1 serving a day starting today. Eat 1 apple a day, eat 1 clementine a day, eat 1 banana a day. I mean, there's better than banana, but banana is better than a donut. Everything's relative. Leafy greens and all the beautiful colors that we talk about, the rainbow diet, white cauliflower and orange carrots and green peppers and red tomatoes, and I'm probably missing a few brown mushrooms. Mushrooms are a superfood. We'll maybe talk a little about the current pandemic and special foods and such. But so all of you, even if you're just plant-based, isn't a commitment that I never will eat another animal food like I chose to a long time ago, and I don't regret it. And if you want to move all the way there, like the movie Game Changers, shows some evidence for it, great. But up it. Breakfast, put some berries, eat an apple. Apples are superstars. We don't give them credit. And if you got stuff in the crisper in the refrigerator, it's going to sit there. I put a bowl on your countertop of clementines and oranges and apples, and people will grab them when they're getting the munchies, and that's the perfect snack.
I love that. And in terms of, are there other things that you would suggest with women differently than what we've suggested so far?
Well, as number one, all the same topics. I mean, your body is as amazing as any man's body, and you've got the same number of arteries and endothelium. And as a woman, you should worry about your risk of future heart attack, future stroke. For most women, if they're not diabetic or smokers, we're talking about a postmenopausal concern. But more and more with our crazy lifestyle and diet, there's exceptions to that too. But, it's around menopause. It's a personal discussion between you and your medical team. Are you going to do hormone replacement therapy and such? We do know, and one of my friends in the medical world, Dr. Neil Barnard, MD, who has written about 20 books on health, has a brand new book out about plant-based diets and hormone health. And he spends a lot of time talking about women with PMS, women with PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, women with irregular periods, infertility, and data that cleaning up your diet and adding in all those brightly colored plant-based foods can have quite a remedial effect or preventive effect. So do all of that and you may benefit, at any age. The one I wanted to point out, though, is the big myth that soy is some kind of man boob cancer-causing food. And, of course, there are soybeans. That's where it all starts. And some people will call that edamame because of the influence of Asian restaurants and such. You can take edamame and turn them into organic tofu. And I stress organic because many soybean crops have been contaminated by Monsanto and Bayer. So you want organic edamame, organic tofu, cut it up in little cubes, throw it in a stir fry, throw it in a salad. Nowadays you can get pre-flavored tofu, has a little barbecue or mesquite flavor in a salad. It's delicious. There's something called tempeh, T-E-M-P-E-H, which is a fermented real soy product that, again, can be put in a stir fry. You can use it as a meat substitute. It's in all the grocery stores. Used to be kind of a tree hugger natural health food store, but tempeh is quite popular now. You want to stay away from like textured vegetable protein, soy crumbles. Everybody can remember maybe 20 years ago's soy chick nuggets to go head to head and deeply fried and breaded. I mean, nobody's going to claim that's a health food, and may still be a little healthier than the fried chick nugget, but it's not the ideal. There's been, and it's probably very honestly conspiracy theory, a lot of meat industry influence. But in all the studies done, as natural a form of soy as you can get, they are not cancer promoting. They are anti-estrogen. They work very similar to a drug some women take to prevent breast cancer called tamoxifen. They work on a certain receptor in breast tissue to decrease the effects of estrogen. You should worry when you're eating beef, chicken, turkey, pork, that those animals were treated with hormones in the farms where they raise, factory farm meats, and they have real animal estrogen that can interact with breast and prostate receptor tissues and may promote cancer, whereas soy blocks that event. So clear data, women that eat soy in their diet have less breast cancer. It's certainly true in Asia in big studies, but it's been confirmed in American studies like Adventist Health Studies. And women who have actually been diagnosed and treated for breast cancer that incorporate soy foods in their diet have been shown to have a lower rate of recurrence. Now, even a woman's gynecologist and oncologist might say the opposite because there is such a pervasive feeling about this. But I would encourage women, soy is joy, get the real facts, read the real data. And in terms of going through menopause and hormonal flashes and all, it can be a great food at every age, but particularly at that age.
Wow, that's fantastic to hear. Okay, so I have several questions about, so because keto is such a big fad, do you think that people should use keto in a healthy way? So I've read a book called, or I think I've either read it or read parts of it, Ketotarian. I'm not sure if you're familiar, but it's basically...
Yeah, Dr. Will Cole's book. Yeah, he's a friend of mine, right.
Oh, okay. So, I mean, is that the kind of, do you think that's a good fats?
Yeah. Give you a real short, a little explanation listeners may know or not, but, ketogenic diet, the ability to induce a state in our body by lowering the amount of carbs, particularly refined carbs, sugars down to nothing, white flours down to nothing, leaving a few carbohydrates that are found in lettuce and beans and berries. So they're called net carbs because they're very high in fiber. And that you can, if you really jack that, so if you're eating a lot less carbohydrate-based foods, you have to be eating more fat and protein-based foods. It's usually fat. It's more meat. It's more cheese. It's more butter. Maybe coconut oil. You can shift some of the metabolism. You don't use as much glucose to fuel your body. You use more ketone bodies, which are made and produced on this diet. And that was discovered decades ago. If you're a child with epilepsy, a very serious and bad condition, even before there were medications, some children stopped having seizures, maybe a third. But all kinds of side effects were reported in the medical articles. Difficult to get a child to follow that diet. Somehow 10 years ago, Hollywood actors, few athletes embraced it. It's sort of redone Atkins diet. And there are quick fix results. Nobody can argue that. There are people that will lose weight. There's 100 different ways to lose weight in 10 days. From not eating to water fasting to ketogenic diets to getting the flu or taking chemotherapy to getting a crystal meth addiction. There's lots of ways to lose weight. Keto does it, but it's a difficult plan to follow long term. And there are people that will say, I've been keto 1 year, 3 years, 4 years. There's a few that will say longer. My concern is a couple. It's a very unnatural diet that doesn't have much example in any real communities that have enjoyed long health long term. You're not going to go to Italy and find ketogenic diet as the natural diet of the Mediterranean basin, where they love their whole grain pasta and they love their home baked breads and their beans and such. Number two, there's about 10 research studies in humans, some as big as 250,000 subjects, some as small as 25,000 subjects, that people that reduce their carbs in their diet long term may sacrifice more disease and actually perhaps not living as long as otherwise. And these are not perfect studies. These are what are called nutritional science studies, but you can go and find them. So I've been teaching my patients, if you've got a wedding come up and you want to do the Atkins kind of thing for 10 days, you'll probably be okay, and you'll drop a dress size perhaps. It's not the only way to do it, but get off of it. Yet there are alternatives. There's a little bit of science using plants to create the same effect. If you take a big plate and you put arugula and walnuts and some soy tofu, and you put some olive oil, extra virgin olive oil or hemp oil on it, you're going to have a diet, if you keep eating that and eating that, that has very low net carbs. You still got a lot of fiber and nutrients and vitamins. So Dr. Cole in Ketotarian talks about that approach. We don't have a lot of data. It's probably the lesser evil. I still wouldn't stand it long term. So the best science to close it down is Dr. Longo, who's a scientist in LA at University of Southern California. His first name is Valter, V-A-L-T-E-R Longo, perhaps the most esteemed nutrition scientist in the world right now. He has a program to use plant-based keto for 5 days and then go back the rest of the month to a healthier Mediterranean or plant-based style diet. And if you want to do it again the next month, he thinks that's enough to gain some benefit. Eat less calories during those 5 days. It's called Prolon, P-R-O-L-O-N, if anybody wants to read about it. That has more science than any jockeying with your carbohydrate content. But still in the long run, having those whole food carbohydrates you're going to find in whole vegetables, I'm not talking refined, you can't eat Skittles and say they're colorful like plants. That's not going to work for you or and such. You got to eat the real plants, the real beans, the peas, the lentils. Those are what are best. Fiber, fiber, fiber. Fiber is found in plants. Fiber reduces a woman's risk of breast cancer. Fiber reduces our risk of colon cancer. Fiber lowers our cholesterol, lowers our blood pressure. It's only in whole plant foods. You never find fiber in a chicken or a turkey or a pig. It just doesn't exist.
Are you familiar with the microbiome and how fiber impacts that? And
yeah, I'm just renting space. My microbiome runs my body. Some people say we really are. It's like we're a hotel and the microbiome are everybody in it, and we're just the space that they live in. These trillions and trillions of bacteria that predominantly are good, friendly, metabolism enhancing. They digest our food and they make us some vitamins and they protect us. But we can throw that off with a course of antibiotics, or when you shift to a high-fat diet, you change your microbiome in a week or two. I'll tell you real quick, there's a fascinating study published about 3 years ago out of Pittsburgh, University of Pittsburgh, where they took people living in southern United States, traditional fried southern diet. And for 2 weeks, they put them on a plant-heavy, native, rustic diet you might find in the wilds of South Africa. And they showed within 2 weeks, your microbiome, your bacteria were completely different, and you were making much healthier molecules and products. But they went to South Africa, and they found the people and put them on the Mississippi, Louisiana fried food diet of high fats, and their microbiome went to hell in just 2 weeks. I mean, this is some of the most sophisticated high-level diets data that's ever been achieved. So, yeah, you can, one meal, you can shift your microbiome. Your microbiome loves fermented foods. It loves fiber. It loves pomegranates. Oh, my God. Add a little pomegranate in your diet, really the whole ones particularly. You make this certain bacteria called Akkermansia, and you can just groove your health up. One of these bright red, beautiful, sexy foods. Very sexy to eat pomegranates. It's fertility seeds in tradition, so add those in.
So this is great. So I'm curious about this. So high fat, even if it's good coconut oils and olive oils and maybe even avocado oils, those are also bad for the microbiome? No. Not
necessarily. In studies that have been done, some animals and a few humans, and I keep saying studies because that's how we learn things. I don't really like to give you my opinion. I like to give you my reading of the literature. It's how we should operate. That if you want to disrupt and maybe destroy the nice healthy balance of your bacteria, your microbiome, have a high saturated fat diet. Where's saturated fat? It's in animal meats, it's in cheeses. If you're baking breads with lard, baked goods, croissants, butter can be very high in saturated fat. But the king of saturated fat is coconut oil. 85% of coconut oil calories are saturated fat calories, twice that of beef and such. So there is some data that one of the best ways to disrupt your microbiome is to use a lot of coconut oil, which any way you get around it is high in saturated fat. So in opposition are fats. The only fat we need in our body are omega-3 fatty acids that become EPA and DHA. You can get them from fish like salmon if you can find a good source. You can get them from ground flaxseed, chia seeds, hemp hearts, walnuts, leafy greens. That's what you need. But the bulk of the data is if you shift from butter, coconut oil, margarine, lard to extra virgin olive oil. In a study just done and published by Harvard in March of 2020 with over 100,000 subjects, you could show and predict a drop in heart risk. And I would say you probably a drop in erectile dysfunction and sexual dysfunction and libido by choosing extra virgin olive oil over butter, margarine, lard, ghee. Extra virgin olive oil has some, but very little saturated fat. It's more monounsaturated fat. And you really have to be a snob about olive oil. You don't want to buy it on the shelf in a plastic clear bottle where the light has probably destroyed it. If it ever was olive oil, it might have been corn oil from the beginning because there is a lot of fraud. So be a little picky and all of that. But that's the better place to be. Now, there are people that choose to have a no oil diet. They learn to use steamers and vegetable broth. They cook in wine, and they thrive. And for weight loss, for certain heart conditions, it's actually what I teach. But to tell everybody in America stop adding all added fats to their diet is not going to be a very popular campaign for presidency.
So what would you say, this is interesting because from my research, and I defer to you, but that what I have read is actually 70% of our immune function is in the gut. Is that about right, do you think?
Yeah, it's called GALT, G-A-L-T, gut-associated lymphoid tissue. But it's true, if you think about it, our skin has to interact with the outside world. We might get a bug bite or exposure to toxins, so our skin is a barrier. But from your mouth to your anus, it's a giant tube that's actually outside your body. Things have to go through it to get inside your body. So we have a huge defense system to protect us from chemicals and parasites and viruses and toxic bacteria and other components, unfortunately now hormones and pesticides that are in our food chain and our water too. So yes, we have, our soldiers are on guard before it's going to let stuff into our body surrounding our GI tract.
Oh, wow. That's fantastic. Does it matter in terms of immune function? And again, we were planning on going a little bit into COVID, prescriptions, if you will, but does it matter how healthy your gut is to fight off something like this, COVID?
Yeah, increasingly there are reports that some people before they're diagnosed with COVID-19 do have some GI symptoms, some diarrhea particularly. We don't know, or at least I've never read that the virus can enter through the GI tract in some way that you swallow somehow contaminated food. It's been a concern with all the carryout. Is carryout creating a risk of getting the virus? And so far, we don't think that's the case. I'd rather everybody do home cooking. No disrespect to restaurants. It's always a healthier choice, or often can be a healthier choice. It's probably true what you just said. And most health authorities are talking about eat less added sugar, cookies, cakes, beverages, up your fruits and vegetables. You're basically preparing your whole body to be at its optimal health, and the gut will be part of that. But, we don't know of a probiotic mixture that in other viral infections like MERS and SARS is the secret. I think there is something to eating fermented foods that will help, and perhaps taking a probiotic, but we don't know for sure.
Okay. So when I'm thinking about, and apologies for my limited insight, but when I'm thinking about a virus being attacked by an immune system, I know there's like tons of different facets of what an immune system is in our bodies, but we've got white blood cells, we've got the gut, like what's attacking a virus?
Yeah. So, I don't think we really know yet, other than social distancing, hand washing, masks, how to prevent, if we're around an exposure to the virus, how to prevent it from attaching to these ACE2 receptors that are in our airways particularly. I don't think we know how to do that. There actually is some conversation. There are prescription drugs called ACE inhibitors, blood pressure drugs, and ARBs. And at first we thought they were at risk to be on them. Now there's conversation. It might be a benefit and block the virus from connecting. And there's actually a brand new research project I just read about today where they're trying to create a little protein or molecule that does the same thing. It'll be in your blood, in your airways. So if the virus comes along, it has no place to lock into a cell and start to injure it. What happens, though, these viruses get into cells, they take over the machinery, the DNA. A virus doesn't have any of that. They cause the cell to start replicating, and explode and create, thousands of copies of the virus. So that's where the immune system comes in. And that's where white blood cells and lymphocytes and macrophages. And we hope there's things we can do to make that response more controlled, effective, and not overdone, because we're hearing about this cytokine storm where the disease begins, but it's our overreaction of our immune system may be part of it. So, there's the basic lifestyle. There's always going to be these measures of distancing and washing and masks and all, but everybody's talking about more sleep, less sugar, less alcohol, more fruits and vegetables, at least walking or some sort of fitness, some stress reduction, whether it be prayer, music, meditation, yoga, breathing, probably not tequila shots, not the recommended stress reduction right now. But finally, maybe there are supplements. And I have to say maybe. And what I could talk to you an hour about the possibility. But what I have done recently to take the heat off, because there's a lot of people get upset when you talk about the possibility that supplements may improve your immune system to protect you, because we think we don't know. And it sounds rather salesy to bring all this up. But I have an associate in Virginia who's chairman of the Department of Critical Care Medicine at the university and editor of the Critical Care Medicine Journal. I mean, that guy's a big shot. And he published a protocol, and I'll repeat it because I can blame him, but that it might be reasonable to take vitamin C, about 500 milligrams twice a day, vitamin D, 2,000 to 4,000, it's called international units a day, zinc, for this short run, maybe 25 to 50 milligrams a day. Good luck finding it in the health food store. Actually, a little melatonin at bed, maybe a milligram of melatonin. It may help you sleep, but there's some immune enhancing impact of melatonin. Interesting to see him put that down. I knew about that, but you don't see too many academic chairmen talk about it. And the last one is probably one that most people don't know. It's called quercetin, Quercetin. It's a antioxidant found in onions, garlic, cherries, apples. There's been discussion. A lot of people take it for like seasonal allergies. You can go to a health food store. There's been discussion. It may have some longevity aspects. Of course, we can't prove that. I'm saying discussion. But all of a sudden, because of its impact on the immune system and response, that it may be of some value to protect you. And that's Dr. Merrick. That's his name, Paul Merrick. That's his protocol. I'm cool with it. And I just wanted to share that.
Awesome. Okay. Well, you mentioned something that I've heard a couple times, and I think this is close to wrapping for our time here. I've heard this, that something around, if you have too strong of an immune system, it could then be fighting, it's fighting your body rather than the virus or something along that. Are you familiar with what I'm talking about?
Yeah, when we're under attack by bacteria, by viruses, by parasites, there's a process called inflammation. The middle word is flame, fire, which is the whole point. Let's go kill the bad guys and return the body to normal. But things can be excessive and overdone. We think autoimmune diseases like lupus and rheumatoid arthritis and multiple sclerosis, our immune system is not under control and responding. It's attacking itself. So we know our immune system can overdo it, whatever the trigger. All those conditions do respond to a plant-based diet. I'll just say you should read about plant-based diets and multiple sclerosis, rheumatoid arthritis. But yes, we are seeing this amazingly robust and probably harmful super immune response that's gone beyond just hopefully killing the virus, and it's damaging lung tissue particularly, making it very hard to provide adequate oxygen levels in this disease. Now, why person A is relatively young and fit and gets the disease and has this terrible lung damage, and the next person doesn't, and they're not always 85 years old and diabetics. There are tragically too many 20, 30, and 40-year-olds that seemingly are in good health that get the disease and either survive it or don't, hopefully do. We don't understand what triggers it, but whether Dr. Merrick's Virginia protocol ups the chance that if we get contact with this virus, we'll have a mild episode, we can only hope.
Well, I'll say on my own personal anecdote, I did just recover from COVID, and
Wow.
I'm pretty darn similar to this Dr. Merrick's good diet. So,
Good. Well,
yeah,
congratulations on getting back.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was very mild actually, by God's grace. It was,
Yeah.
yeah, it's good. So, wonderful. Okay, well, let me please invite you to tell us about your newest book. You've got several out there, but I know that there's one very recent.
Yes. Yeah, thank you for that invite. And just point out, you brought it up right before we went live. 3 books ago, I participated in a book called Vegan Sex. Kind of a funny title and a very funny cover. It's available on Amazon. Has amazing recipes. It's worth the relatively modest purchase price just for the recipes. But it's a woman's journey in finding men that still had libido. Friend of mine, and she asked me to write some medical chapters, which is about that endothelium wallpaper responsiveness. So I'd encourage you, go watch the Game Changer movie, pick up Vegan Sex. But my most recent book is a rather technical book, but it's for the public. 1 out of every 4 persons, when we hopefully get to the day we're not only thinking about coronavirus, we have to get back to thinking about heart health. And 1 out of every 4 people inherit a kind of cholesterol called lipoprotein a. 1 out of every 4 is 1.8 billion people. I mean, it's common. It's the most common genetic inheritance that could put you at risk for a heart attack, a stroke, or needing heart surgery. But nobody knows about it. It was discovered in 1963. Every lab runs the lab test for $30, $40, $20, whether you go to Quest or LabCorp or your local hospital. But it's not yet on the menu of what a primary care doc is probably going to recommend. I wrote a book to plead, consider getting it, particularly if you have a family history of heart attack, stroke, heart surgery, people dying of heart disease. It may be the reason that was occurring in the family. Of course, diet, fitness, smoking are always factors. And there's all kinds of strategies what we'll be doing about it. Right now, there is no drug specifically for lipoprotein A. If you've had your cholesterol checked, that's good, but you haven't had your lipoprotein A checked. It doesn't show up on the routine panel on your physical you might have had with your doctor. Ask for it. Look up the book. It's called Lipoprotein A, The Heart's Quiet Killer. It's short, it's easy, and again, it's packed with recipes, so it's well worth the small ticket price on Amazon and Barnes & Nobles. You'll be the most educated person in your neighborhood if you read the book.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I'll have it in the show notes, all the resources that we talked about. But where can our audience connect with you online and follow you?
Behind a mask. Okay, that's a little Corona joke. But yeah, I'm sitting in my preventive cardiology clinic in suburban Detroit, and I do see people from literally all over the world. But you can find everything I do at drjoelkahn.com. But that's drjoelkahn.com. And, whether it's United States or Canada or South America or Europe, I mean, I have been very privileged to take care of fine people everywhere.
Awesome. Well, Dr. Joel, this has been amazing. So thank you so much for your time.
I enjoyed it thoroughly, and we can come back and get into the deep, deep dive of more sexual talk if you want. But I think people got the idea that, you so much of your health is in your hands. It's not at the doctor's office. It's not at the hospital. And now more than ever, it's a good time to learn about your power to preserve and enhance your health, no matter what your age is, no matter what your problems are. Don't feel that you're stuck in a rut on 10 medicines. Ask the question, can I reverse what I have and maybe get off some of these, and work with your healthcare provider.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Kahn. I so appreciate it. I have learned a lot. I hope that you have. And definitely reach out and understand his resources. He's just got great information and insights to share. So otherwise, I want to thank you for being a listener. You don't have to spend time with me every week, and it really means a lot. So thank you. The only reason this podcast has been successful is because you have been doing the brave work of sharing its message, and I cannot be more grateful. So thank you for what you've done. It's been awarded 19th of the top 30 relationship podcasts out there, and I'm just amazed. It has grown to be reaching even 155 different countries worldwide. So I cannot be more grateful for you being the brave people to send these podcasts to friends. And, I'm not on social media. So the only way this thing gets spread is by you deciding to take the gumption of sharing it with a friend. And who knows, it may well save their marriage or their health in this case. And then finally, I would love for you to spend a few moments. It would mean so much to me if this has meant something to you, DYM, if it has blessed you, if you go and add some kind of iTunes review or a review and a 5-star rating at whatever place you do listen to the podcast. The way to do that is you actually, even if you're already a subscriber, you have to search Delight Your Marriage, click on it in iTunes, and then scroll all the way down until you see the stars, and then you click 5 stars. Again, the only way that this podcast has been spread is because people search in iTunes, and then because of the number of reviews and ratings, they decide to listen. So if you're able to add your rating, add your review, it would mean so much to me, and it would cause more people to listen. A lot of people are like, I love your content, but I'm too embarrassed to send it anywhere. So, well, no problem. Just add a quick rating, and that does the work for you. It ranks higher in the charts, so more people can listen and hopefully be impacted. So again, thank you. It means the world to me that you would even listen and consider sharing and rating and reviewing. All right, we'll talk more soon. Take care. Bye.